So good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to watch our Facebook Live. This is our third virtual event in our Why We Vote series, which is hosted by us at Florida Conservation Voters, where we're talking about different issues that we work on and how they connect to the general election this year and why everything is relevant and how they are on your ballot. I'm Savana Roach. I'm FCV's digital organizer, and most of my work looks like doing just this, voter education, voter outreach, and encouraging people to sign up to vote by mail or vote early in the election. So tonight our topic is clean energy, and we're joined by my co-worker, Zac from FCV, who is our clean energy and climate policy advocate. So I'll let Zac go ahead and introduce himself as well as our lovely panelists.
Oh, thank you so much, Savannah. As Savannah said, my name is Zac Cosner. I'm the climate and clean energy advocate for Florida Conservation Voters. My job is to manage initiatives related to energy and climate policy, which Florida Conservation Voters takes up. And my major initiatives so far have been the management of the Connected in Crisis Coalition, as well as the Clean Energy for All table, which is a statewide working group dedicated to articulating a policy vision for a transition to clean energy economy in the state of Florida that's rooted in the principles of justice and equity. And next, I'll introduce Angela DeMonbreun of Solar United Neighbors.
Hi, well, thanks for having me. I'm Angela DeMonbreun. I'm Regional Director for Solar United Neighbors, but I'm also the Florida Director here, and I'm located in Jacksonville, Florida. And we essentially develop co-op programs, kind of like a bulk purchasing, really around the state. We're excited. We just launched our 60th program over the last, let's say, 4 years of our existence. But we also work on some policy initiatives, and this, for example, defending solar policy, making sure people have access to continue to put it on their roof, as well as we want to progress solar policy in the state. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Angela. And we also have with us tonight George Cavros from Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Great. Thanks, Savannah. Thanks, Zac. Hi, Angela. Thanks for inviting me to participate and talk about my two favorite things, energy policy and the importance of voting. So Southern Alliance for Clean Energy is a regional nonprofit clean energy organization. We advocate for moving the state of Florida to a lower cost, lower risk clean energy future. And we do this by advocating for ramping up solar energy, scaling up energy efficiency in the state, and also encouraging the adoption of electric vehicles. I represent the organization at the Florida Public Service Commission, which is the most important agency that you've probably never heard of. It regulates the state's largest utilities, the investor-owned utilities. So just a quick note from me, I kind of started in this space about 20 years ago by rallying a community here in Broward County to oppose a power plant. And we were successful in doing that. The local government did not give them sort of the land use changes they wanted to do that plant. Did something similar a couple years later in St. Lucie County, challenging a big proposed coal plant. And then a couple years later, the clean energy community came together in the 2007-2009 timeframe to derail about 5 proposed coal plants for the state of Florida. And it helped that we had a governor at the time that made it very clear that he did not want to see utilities generating electricity by using coal. So, my experience has showed me that you need leadership for good clean energy outcomes. You need leadership at the local level, and you need it at the state level. And you definitely need it at the national level, but don't ignore your state or local elected leaders, because they're critically important for good outcomes.
Yes, that is definitely a topic we're going to be hitting on a lot tonight, the importance of local and state level elections. And so as we dive into our discussion topics tonight, I just wanted to start off with some of the initiatives that FCV does around clean energy. And so Zach, would you mentioned that your work involves the Clean Energy for All table as well as Connecting Crisis. Could you tell us more about Connecting Crisis and what that looks like?
Sure. So Connecting Crisis is a coalition that sprung out of our Clean Energy for All table, which is composed of groups dedicated to preventing Floridians from being disconnected from their power or subjected to out-of-control utility debt during the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. We have some great partners in that, including Southern Alliance for Clean Energy and Solar United Neighbors. And generally, we've been doing a lot of work advocating at the PSC, trying to beseech the governor to take action and trying to keep this issue alive in the media and people aware of, the massive looming crisis that, is unfolding as we speak, as well as trying to get some relief for the individuals who are potentially affected by disconnections at the worst possible time. The Connecting Crisis Coalition is sort of brought together by mutual understanding that nobody should be, cast into energy insecurity during a massive public health crisis of this nature.
Exactly, and you said that came out of the Clean Energy for All table. Could you share a little bit more details about what Clean Energy for All is?
Sure. So Clean Energy for All is the sort of a working group, a gathering place for organizations across the state that are dedicated to principles of environmental justice, of equity, and to a clean energy transition, a just transition to a clean energy economy, to come together to share resources, to inform others about what projects they're taking on, and share common ideas, practices, principles, and ways of dealing with things, as well as for coalitions to spin off from, such as Connected in Crisis, where organizations recognize that there's a common threat that needs to be, or opportunity that needs to be addressed, and that needs to have concerted effort placed upon it. And basically, it's been very successful so far, and we're growing all the time and bringing in new members. And we have again Southern Alliance for Clean Energy and Solar United Neighbors. Both are members of that coalition, or that working group rather. And we're generally probably one of the only place that sort of tries to articulate that sort of justice vision for a just transition at the state level as a sort of collaborative entity.
So what does a just transition look like?
Good question. I mean,
and anyone can take this one. Anyone can chime in.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. As policy wonks, we sort of, we kind of know what works or what has worked in different places. And I think a just transition just starts with going into local communities and listening to them, and not, necessarily having to come in and empower them, because they already have the power locally. So it's really, it's listening, and it's providing an authentic seat at the table as we're developing our agenda and our policies. So I think that's that's a lot of it.
That's super important. Thank you for explaining that, George. And so you talked about the clean energy transitioning, a just transition into clean energy possibilities in Florida. Can any of you tell us about those possibilities and what clean energy possibilities in Florida actually look like?
Wow.
I know.
Where to start?
I know.
So I mentioned earlier, that we had a governor in 2009 that was wanted to leave a green legacy. And, he made it very clear he didn't want coal plants. And he actually set out and issued some executive orders and got put some things in motion. Like he wanted an assessment of Florida's climate pollution. He wanted to know where it was coming from. He established a group that actually set out and to issue recommendations on how to tackle it. And then he also tasked his agencies, the Florida Public Service Commission, to develop a renewable energy goal for the state. He proposed 20% by 2020, and also his Department of Environmental Protection to come up with a plan to lower greenhouse gas pollution in Florida. So, that's what leadership can do. Unfortunately, a lot of his initiatives didn't make it across the finish line because the political dynamic changed in Florida around 2010, 2011, and we've been in a little bit of a dark age. But I feel really good about where we're at right now. You look at what other states are doing. There are 7 states now that have a goal of 100% by 2040, 2050 timeframe to go completely renewable. We have vast potential here in Florida. See, you shouldn't get me started. We have vast we have vast energy efficiency potential here in Florida. And by energy efficiency, I mean helping customers reduce their energy use and save money on their bills. And as Zac was alluding to, the COVID crisis has made it, has just laid bare how much energy burden so many Florida families are struggling with. So, right now, Florida is pretty much at the bottom of the list of state rankings for providing meaningful programs to customers, energy efficiency programs that help them cut energy waste. So that's, we can do more there. And of course, just electrification of transportation. And this is where your local leaders really come in, because they can adopt fleet goals for their cities. They can pass ordinances to make it easier. So to install chargers. So when you build a new structure, the infrastructure is already there to just, put a charger in. So, there's a lot of possibility, but it all takes leadership, and it all takes having the right people in office that are, that are going to lead.
Yeah, exactly. And so you touched on chargers and electrifying your fleets. You want to tell everyone viewing a bit about the benefits of driving electric and having an all-electric fleet?
Well, the benefits are many. Electric vehicles, first of all, if you haven't driven one, drive one, because the performance is outstanding. The cost to maintain them is about 8 times less than it is for a conventional vehicle. Really, the only things you're replacing are the tires and the windshield wipers. To fuel the vehicles, it's substantially less than a fossil fueled car, and of course, the emissions are less too for driving one. So for a municipality, it's about saving money over the long term. For an individual, it's about really just superior driving performance and being part of the solution.
Being part of the solution, yes, absolutely. And so would you say that that's one of the main areas that SACE works on? Could you tell us some more about what your work looks like in Florida with Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, and if there's anything that people can tap into right now?
Well, I mean, I would certainly encourage folks to visit our website, cleanenergy.org. We are active at the State Florida Public Service Commission. That's the agency that sets the energy efficiency goals for the utilities. They do that every 5 years. And with, the assistance of our allies in the Clean Energy for All table, Zac, Angela, and others, we're trying to encourage that agency in a number of ways to really just reform their decades-old practices in setting goals. They're so old that no other state even uses them, and it creates very low goals. So, I mean, that's just an example of one of the things we're trying to do, even though it's a state-level issue and it's at an agency that many people have not heard of. It's critically important to so many hardworking Florida families.
Absolutely. Wow. And so as we move deeper into clean energy and what clean energy actually looks like in Florida, we hear a lot about this term called net metering. And, it's a term that was new to me when I came into this line of work, but I don't know all the details about it. And I'm sure it's a pretty jargony term. So I was hoping, Zac, could you tell everyone a bit about net metering and what that looks like, what it means?
Yeah, sure thing. So net metering is essentially just a billing mechanism that allows for producers of solar power, up to 2 megawatts, to basically provide the excess power that they don't use during the day, back to the system in exchange for credits against their electricity usage and their overall bills, and basically allowing them to fully tap into the value of the energy that they create themselves with their own solar generating capacity. And the assaults on net metering kind of demonstrate, and the ways in which utility companies have attempted to undermine net metering, which they don't like for a multitude of reasons. Mainly that it is viewed as competition, but also it sort of eats into it both eats into their profits, and it eats into their control over the system and their capacity to have basically, or to have as much ownership over the electricity producing infrastructure in the state as possible. And they've tried a number of mechanisms for trying to come at net metering protections, which Florida has very strong net metering policies. Particularly, it basically allows for individuals to get credits that are equal to the amount that the utility company would be selling that energy for, which is very strong way to encourage people to adopt solar panel power on their own roofs. And so we've seen the utility companies sort of come at this from a variety of electoral mechanisms. First, in 2016, there was an attempt to sort of mislead voters using this shady solar amendment, which basically the language was so vague and chaotic that it was made to sound like it potentially could have been pro solar power, but actually it would have essentially eroded away the the protections that those who engage in net metering, and the sort of rights that those who currently engage in net metering have in this state. And so that failed because people listened. We were able to, and George was very involved in this fight. Was able to sort of get out the information showing that actually that amendment would have critically undermined the expansion of rooftop solar. And so that sort of showcased the importance of having a really educated voting populace, of learning about what these amendments that are on the ballot say and what they'll actually do, as well as the importance of actually getting out and voting, and paying attention not just to the candidates, not just to the top of the ticket, but to all of the individual things that are on the ballot, because there's so much that, and such important things are decided via constitutional amendment at every election cycle in Florida. And now currently there's another potential looming threat to net metering. The utilities never really backed down on their attempts to sort of get a much more favorable set of conditions for themselves in this state. And we're likely going to see a new wave of assaults on net metering through the Florida legislature in this upcoming session. And if we don't have candidates and elected officials in there who understand the importance of rooftop solar, understand how the distributed solar can provide much greater efficiency within the system, and can provide huge value in terms of resilience, and generally just save customers money, then it's possible we could see the massive strides that we've been taking and are about to sort of see take off in this state undermined before they can really reach full penetration of rooftop solar. I'd ask Angela to also speak on this subject, because Solar United Neighbors is definitely a principal organization advancing rooftop solar in the state.
Sure. So, in fact, that amendment that you're referring to that happened years back, 4 years ago, that was really when we kind of came on board as a program, and partnering with Southern Alliance for Clean Energy and the League of Women Voters of Florida, there was like, we've got to get the people out to vote. And even more importantly, thereafter, after that was successfully defeated, really digging deeper into communities and informing people about their rights to go solar, helping them go solar, and really, and also encouraging them to reach out to their elected officials and being more involved. And so, for example, we'd launch a program and we'd have a press conference when we had in-person anything. We'd have a press conference and we'd encourage our elected officials, their elected officials in their respective communities to attend or sign up for the co-op, go solar yourselves, see the actual concrete benefits of solar. And we are really excited in how successful that has been, and really laying that groundwork. And we've always been very transparent that we are building the solar army for impending fights, like what we're working, we hopefully have stalled with the current initiative at the Public Service Commission over the last couple of weeks to kind of look into net metering further. And we hope that has been pushed down the road a little bit further, but really engaging people. And in the case of the Florida Public Service Commission, their comments, they received over 16,000 comments from Floridians. And that, as I understand, was the most number of comments that they had ever received about a single issue. That's incredible. So we're really excited to be a part of that, along with Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. But that's really been our objective over the handful of years since defeating Amendment 1, is really engaging with the communities and taking that a step further. I agree with George. There's a little optimism, I think, moving forward. And I think it's the sheer number of people that have solar on their roof that has benefited from going solar, as well as, you know, we've been saying, like, solar is not a partisan issue. Like, clean energy is not partisan. And so it is really nice to see not just our, you know, Republican elected officials locally and at the state level, but also conservative organizations coming into the state that we all can coalesce around and partner. And defending net metering is a prime example of that. All organizations came together and submitted comments to defend. And for whatever reason, people want to go solar, and that's really not, and you know, it's kind of, that's a non-issue. Many people we find working with individuals on the ground, they go solar for a multitude of reasons. It's not just environmental for many people. Quite honestly, it's the economics of going solar and saving on their energy bill. And then they take the next step of they want to buy an EV for, again, saving on gas, you know. So I think it's really, I think we should be optimistic that the future is bright in the Sunshine State.
Literally.
We just need to keep moving and keep it moving in a sunny manner, and not put up any barriers and fight those barriers. Because we, quite honestly, we do see, you know, continued barriers as far as whether it's a local permitting issue, whether it's a rural cooperative utility or local municipal utility that has put up barriers or eliminated net metering altogether. And really encouraging. And so I do want to tie this into voting at the local level, voting down the ballot. You know, not just focusing on who's running for president, or even right now, like our state races are vitally important. That's great. However, the local, especially our communities that are community-owned utilities like rural cooperatives, and in the case of my hometown, Jacksonville, JEA is essentially owned by the community. And people need to understand that who we vote on the local level affects their board appointees, and that board affects policy. So all of these things are very, very tied together. And I strongly encourage people to look at clean energy plans and what individual candidates have said for or against clean energy altogether. And, you know, make an informed decision if clean energy is important to you, like it is to so many Floridians.
Exactly. I could not agree more. Thank you for highlighting that. And, you know, going back to rooftop solar, you mentioned that there's so many different reasons why someone would opt to get solar panels on their rooftop. However, there might be a lot of reasons why people would not opt for it. And so could you, like, clue us in on any of those myths that might be luring around that would be holding people back from going solar?
Sure, there's a number of myths that we push back against daily. Number one, for many, yes, solar on your roof may not be affordable, but it continues to go down. There continues to be more financing options available. We work really hard to compile all that and work with local partner organizations. For example, if there's a local community credit union that's offering a solar specific loan package, or working with other nonprofits that offer financing options for, and as well as energy efficiency upgrades. So we work hard on really pushing back against that myth. And then that they still may be unaffordable. And that's where we want to improve policy. That's where we need to actually, because solar ownership it may not be for everyone. So policy, we're working on a multitude of fronts, but there's also other myths that we constantly push back on. And a big one for Floridians is I can't put solar on my roof because a hurricane will come and rip it off. And there are some exceptions. That's generally not the rule. And in fact, we had a program in the Panhandle and there's been so many hurricanes. It was either Michael or Matthew from the Panhandle a couple years ago. And we followed all of those installs very closely. And we have strict building codes across the state. And yes, they could be improved, but we didn't hear of a slew of panels flying off roofs. And so we continue to push back against that myth. These things actually affix very securely and that are actually somewhat managed out of the Florida Solar Energy Center that approves system designs in the state. So those are probably the biggest two that we see that in Florida, as well as, I have a certain type of roof I can't put it on, which is a myth as well. Essentially in Florida, we have tile, we have shingle and metal, and you can affix a solar array on all three of those.
Okay, wonderful. So the next time I hear anyone saying, I can't put it on my roof because of the material, fact check. So that's why these conversations are important. So thank you for cluing us in on that. Everyone, there's always an excuse for something. And so conversations like this help us to kind of like join those dots together and make sense of it all. And it makes us more informed voters and more informed people in general. And so thank you for that. And so just to like reiterate and, bring things together back towards the election and what is at stake right now. And any of you are free to, jump in on this, but are there any particular ballot initiatives or amendments that are posed to Floridians right now that people should pay particular attention to?
So I'll start it off, and it's not related to a particular ballot initiative, but would like to just kind of tie it back to the climate crisis.
Yes.
The science tells us that we need to start making deep reductions in carbon pollution starting now and in the next 10 years, and then be at net zero carbon emissions by the 2050 timeframe. And like Angela alluded to, the cost of solar has dropped a lot in the last decade. We're seeing it really kind of really explode on rooftops. The utilities are actually building. They're late to the game, but better late than never. They are now constructing a lot of large utility scale solar arrays, and they're doing that because it's cheaper to generate electricity from solar than it is from fossil fuels or nuclear power. So we're headed in a good direction. There are more people that are adopting electric vehicles. The cost of batteries and vehicles is coming down. The question is, are we doing it fast enough to meet the climate challenge? And I think this is where you need leadership from local elected officials, from state and from national officials to kind of, inject policies that will accelerate that transition.
Pun intended.
Excuse the pun. But, I have a 9-year-old son and am sort of very concerned about the environmental legacy that we might be leaving him and his generation. So voting is critical, and knowing where the candidates stand on climate or clean energy is also important for voters to know.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. You know, like that's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing these events, because these are all parts of why we vote. You know, we vote for a clean energy future. We vote for the next generations. So thank you for, you know, just reiterating that, because it's so important that we elect climate champions who will fight for these issues in the legislature. But we can't get them there unless we vote, you know. So we just want to encourage everyone to sign up to vote by mail. The deadline is October 24th, so there's still time to request your vote by mail ballot. If you are hesitant about the state of mailing systems right now, you can always drop off your ballot at your supervisor of elections office. And also during early voting, which starts on October 19th in most of the states, and then on October 24th, there'll be drop boxes at every early voting location throughout the entire state, where you can just drop off your mail-in ballots and leave and go back home, and you've done your duty, you've done your job, you're good. You know, I don't like long lines at the grocery store. I definitely don't want a long line to go vote. So it's just such a convenience that we're able to request our ballot and then just go drop it off at our convenience. So I just want to reiterate, as Angela said, to vote down the ballot. You know, these ballot initiatives that are happening at a local level, they're not the first thing you're going to see on your ballot. They're buried towards the end. So it's really important that we make it to the end of the ballot and give each initiative the recognition and the attention that it deserves, and to be informed voters. And so as we move towards the ending here, we just want to open up the space for any questions from anyone that's watching on the Facebook Live. But Angela and George, thank you so much for joining us. And are there any last words that you'd like to say to anyone that's watching? Any like calls to action?
Vote, vote,
Yeah.
vote. Get your friends to vote. Vote.
Yes, definitely. And I can't reiterate enough, vote down that ballot. There may be a local referendum that has to do with your local utility. Jacksonville has one such referendum on there as far as the appointment process to the JA board. And there's also, you know, there are local organizations that have voter guides. I got to plug the League of Women Voters of Florida and the local chapters. They work really hard to really put out voter, not just voter guides, but candidate questionnaires. And so they're a great resource. And yeah, I can't emphasize enough to vote down that ballot. And in addition to the judicial races, folks, so all the way down that ballot.
All the way down. Love that. And Zach, any last things you want to hit before we wrap up?
You know, I'm not sure I could say anything that hasn't been said better by George and Angela. You got to vote, and you know, everything on that ballot is important. And you know, there are a lot of very critical amendments and ballot initiatives that are on the ballot statewide this year. It's important to be informed, especially when you read those amendments, because they can have very tricky language, and that's often by design. So stay informed and make sure to vote, and vote for everything.
Yes, vote for everything in mind. Vote with everything in mind, right?
Vote for every position, rather, or every item.
Oh yes, vote in every race. Yes, that makes sense. Yes, absolutely. So as we wrap up, there aren't any questions in the Facebook Live, but I just wanted to thank everyone again for joining us tonight. These conversations are really important, and it wouldn't make any sense if we didn't have panelists who are experts in this area to join us. Then I'd just be here talking by myself, and that would make sense. So thank you so much, George and Angela and Zach, for joining us this evening and sharing your knowledge with us. And we just want to remind everyone to go vote and make it to the end of the ballot. All right, well, that's it for tonight, and we hope everyone has a great evening.